Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 4 of Leesburg Teens Online. I just want to take a second to acknowledge if you are watching this on our website, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Instagram, if you're watching on YouTube. Those are kind of the 4 areas that we are publishing to. I just want to say welcome, and whether you're a part of our community normally or not, we just want to welcome you in and hope that today can be beneficial for you and for your family. So this video is intended to close up our story of Job. We've been looking for the last 3 episodes. The first video of an overview of the story. The second one, we talked about Job's response and the questions that we might ask if we were in that situation, seeing from his example yesterday. We talked about how to not be a terrible friend to someone who is going through unexplainable tragedy. And today we're going to close this up. And the main point is this: we are going to look at how to ask the right questions in times of trouble and chaos. So just a 20-second recap of the story of Job so far, and again, feel free to look back at previous videos and check this out. But basically, Job was a man of integrity. He was righteous in God's eyes. He was upright. People on earth acknowledged that. God acknowledged that. There was an accuser in heaven. The biblical language is the Satan. So there was an accuser, an adversary that came to God and said, well, of course, he is going to follow you and trust you. You've given him so much, he's just trying to hang on to that good stuff in life. So God says in his wisdom, okay, I will allow bad stuff to happen around him, but don't touch the man himself. So that happens. Job never loses his integrity. Back up into heaven again, and God before his angels, and then also the accuser says, hey, look, he passed that trial by fire. And the accuser says, yeah, but let me get at him personally, and then he'll doubt you, and then he'll deny you. So God, again, in his wisdom, allows that to happen. Job at that point is starting to feel the effects even more, not just emotional, but also physical. His wife tells him, hey, God's obviously against you, just curse him and die. And then he has 3 friends who come and give terrible advice. So today, though, we're going to see when God finally reveals himself directly to Job in this story, and what we can learn from that and what we can take from that in our current situation, whatever that may be. At the beginning of the Job story, Job tries to ignore the question, why has this happened to me? Everybody else in his life was trying to figure that out. Why has this happened? Why is this happening? What have you done? What have your kids done? What is God thinking? What is he planning through all of this? And he's trying to ignore that, but after time and after all this tragedy and after everything sits and after he's not just comforted but spurred on by his friends in a negative way, Job starts to ask that question. In chapter 7, he basically says, God, why have you put a bullseye on me? Why am I your target? And he goes on and he has this sense of doubt and struggle, which is completely understandable, which many of us would, any of us, I would say, would, in this circumstance that we would find ourselves in if we were in the life of Job. So then after the discourse with all of Job's friends, there's another guy that comes and he gives some better advice. If you'd like to check that out, read the story of Job in there. It's a good section. But for our purposes today, I want to focus on after all that happens, after the dust kind of settles, God comes to Job in the form of a storm. And he starts to ask Job some rhetorical questions. These questions are really powerful. And the purpose of these questions, as we're getting ready to see, is to point out to Job that he's asking the wrong question. Instead of asking God, why are you doing this? He should have been asking all along, God, can you help me through? Are you trustworthy to be able to help me get through this? Some of the questions that God asks Job is, where were you when I poured the concrete for the earth's foundations? Where were you when I separated the sky and the land and the sea? Where were you when I commanded the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets? And who are you, the one that keeps and holds them in place? Do you have the combination to the shed where I store lightning and snow and hail? Do you have an on-off switch for rain? Do you manage wildlife, seeing them from birth to death and caring for them every step along the way? Are you the one who gives creation its strength, from which everything draws its energy? Did you teach a bird how to fly? And at that point, Job has a very small response, and basically he says, God, I doubted you, but seeing that you are this all-powerful, all-knowing, bigger than my circumstances, God, I put my hand over my mouth and am silent. And God goes on and continues and gives a couple more examples, but through all of that conversation between God and Job, Job got the point. And the point is this: in times of trouble, don't ask, why is this happening? A better question to ask is, God, are you big enough to see me through? Are you strong enough to help us overcome this? Are you wise enough to give me a part in your plan to help my friends and neighbors and family? Now, here's a strange part of this, right? God answered a question, but he didn't answer Job's question. He never answered why. He never said, well, there was this accuser that came in the heavenly realms and said... He didn't say, hey, because later on, thousands of years later, there are going to be people who are going through times of struggle and trial and hurt, who need to see your example and who need to... And I'm not even sure, because the book of Job never even tells us all those things. We can guess, but he never answers why, which is frustrating, right? The frustrating part is that we don't get the answer to the question, why did this happen? That Job didn't get that answer, and a lot of times we don't either. But here's the awesome part in God's response. He does answer the better question to ask, which is this: God, are you big enough to handle what's going on right now? Is all of this catching you by surprise? Is there any hope for moving forward in this situation? God, in pointing to all of his eternal qualities, his all-powerful, all-sustaining, all-knowing, all-wise properties, reminds Job, and I hope reminds us too, you can trust me to help you through this. So I hope right now, in whatever kind of circumstance you find yourself in, the stuff that we all share in common, the things that each of us have and are struggling on our own, I hope that you can remember and know that it's not about figuring out why this happened. Wisdom says, God, I'm going to trust that you're big enough. Can you help me get through? So in this time, or whenever you find yourself in times of trouble, ask the right question. Don't spend time figuring out why. Instead say, God, can you help me through? I have confidence that he is a God that's big enough, powerful enough, wise enough, strong enough to be able to get us all through. And that's what gives me hope, and I hope that that shares a little bit of hope with you today too.